Hey everyone, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going to talk about Battlegrounds. Mainly two things. Number one, the queue times. I want to show you something maybe you don't know about, which is about the mercenary queue system. I know even though that many of you might know about it, I know there is at least one of you that doesn't, and I think it's worth bringing up again. I also think there are improvements to the system that need to be made, especially going into Shadowlands. Next, we're going to talk about the balance and how things are going in Battlegrounds right now without PvP tuning. The removal of PvP tuning was so requested by everybody, but now the impact is the experience of Battlegrounds is very volatile. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Number one, the queue times. If you don't know this, you haven't been queuing Battlegrounds for the past 5 or 10 years. The situation is, on the Horde side, if you queue for a Battleground, you get about, right now it's about a 6-minute wait time, but during the hype of an X-Pack, and people are just kind of goofing off right now in pre-patch, but during the hype of an X-Pack, queue times for Horde can get up to like 15 minutes, and that's because we assume, anyway, there are so many people queuing, and it's purely a numbers game. The community has always thought of Horde as the PvP faction, at least in the circles that I've been playing with for a very long time. They've always said, if you want to win Battlegrounds, go Horde. You'll have to wait a long time for the queues, but you'll win. Now, I personally don't believe that, but the fact of the queue time is true. The longer queue time is on the Horde side. The short queue time, less than 2 minutes, usually instant queues, is on the Alliance side. Now, this is kind of a big deal, and maybe we would have thought that the war mode and the fact that Alliance get extra war mode bonuses and that push towards PvP that they kind of made a little bit would have altered this somewhat, but it didn't. We still have a huge difference, especially during prime time, of Horde players that are queuing for Battlegrounds versus Alliance players that are queuing for Battlegrounds. And if you didn't know, I want to quickly explain to you how you can actually queue for the other faction. So if I'm Horde and I don't want to wait 12.5 minutes, I can go to one of these two NPCs. One of these NPCs is in Dalaran, which is a Legion X-Pack. So in Shadowlands, it'll be 2 X-Packs before, which is out of the Shadowlands. In a weird spot, the Underbelly, where if you talk to him, he'll give you an option. If you click it, it will give you a buff that says you'll be able to queue for the other faction. That means if I'm Horde, and I get the buff and I queue, I get an instant queue. This is a big deal for those players out there that don't want to wait 15 minutes to be able to experience a Battleground. Now, like, some people will have the opinion that that means they're going to lose more often because they're queuing quickly with the Alliance. But really, I don't know if that's really the case. I don't have the data to prove that, but I do know that the queue time will be instant. Now, the other place is Muganbala for the Horde in BFA. You can go there. There's an NPC you can talk to. Same effect. He'll allow you to queue for the Alliance. Otherwise, you just queue for the, queue for the Horde. You have that longer wait time. Now, as an Alliance, you can only go to Dalaran to get the buff, unfortunately. But as an Alliance, you can actually choose, if you think you're always losing all the time or whatever it is, you can go to Dalaran, go to the Underbelly, get the buff, and you can queue for the Horde. If you didn't know about that, I just wanted to take a minute. It's worth the minute to explain that to you. This is also a big deal through leveling. Through leveling faster queues versus slower queues. Again, wins versus losses, potentially, but yeah. So the big part of here is that you have to go to this NPC in this region of the map, of the region of the world of Warcraft, Azeroth, and you have to get this buff. It's kind of weird that that's the case. Even though that when you queue for the Horde or you queue for the Alliance, you actually switch races when you go into that Battleground, you actually get those other racials. I'm actually surprised that that even exists at all. But because it does, I really, really believe that Blizzard needs to make that extremely accessible for people to use, mainly in the user interface for queuing for Battlegrounds. There should be a checkbox or some way to say, I'm okay queuing for the other faction. That's because of the difference of queue times. If I have a 10-minute queue time versus an instant queue, the assumption is that, well, that's because so many people are waiting in line to get into Battlegrounds on the Horde side. So queuing against Alliance, if you just switch yourself over to that small stack that, there's only 4 people waiting instead of 5,000, you're going to get into that Battleground faster. Now, I think that one is making that option more accessible needs to happen. It's not a big deal. The fact that it's out there in the world is like the only buff of that nature that can have your can impact your queuing mechanism. I was trying to think of a different one, but I don't have any. The other idea is that they should allow Horde to queue against Horde. So instead of just having it be Horde and Alliance, just fully stack, and maybe the mercenary system does this today, but just fully stack. Say, I'm okay queuing against Horde or against my own faction, and I'm okay queuing against Alliance. What this would do is not only make it Horde versus Alliance, but just totally equalize the board of just saying, okay, well, all of these people can now shift over there, or Horde can actually queue against Horde instantly if there's like a very low number of Alliance. It'll just make the queuing mechanism work a lot faster. I think these are actually big deals when we think about, hey, I just want to get in the game. I have 2 hours to play a day, or I have 2 hours every other day, because not everybody has as much time as other people, and I want to get into a BG. This is about making the game accessible for those that maybe don't have all the grind time, and they want to get into a BG. And obviously 15 minutes isn't a huge amount of time to do that before you start dinner or whatever it is, right? But it would just make it a lot more accessible and a lot easier and streamlined for people to experience those battlegrounds. So I think that that would be a big deal. And I think that, you know, beyond the fact that Horde versus Horde, even entire BGs of Horde versus Horde, or Alliance versus Alliance, you know, and when I'm saying Horde versus Horde, right now when you queue as a Merc, you actually change faction when you load into the battleground. Like I, as a Volpura, change into a Dwarf. I'm saying that why not just make it so that when you queue up and using this option, you can actually go Orc versus Orc instead of having to force a race change. Now, maybe some lore people won't like that, but I just want it to be a more streamlined experience. So that's a big deal for me. And I think it is going to become an even bigger deal when we talk about the next thing, which is balancing battlegrounds. Now, I'm not saying, wow, PvP and class design and all that stuff needs to be balanced. I'm not saying compositions need to be balanced. What I'm saying is that experience and gear is now a huge, huge deal in PvP. With the removal of PvP tuning, which was removed and complained about for a long time, because PvP tuning was this black box of calculations Blizzard was doing under the table that was modifying your power in Battlegrounds or in Arena. It was modifying it so if you were not geared and you went against someone with a ton of gear, it would equalize you out a little bit, so it wouldn't feel so dominating. Well, guess what? Thanks to Rex Troy and everyone else requesting it, and I think it's a great change, they've removed it. So now, if you go into a battleground as soon as you hit max level of 50 right now, and you have no gear, and you go against someone at 50 with a ton of gear, he will two-shot you. And that's what we asked for, and now that's what we have. And because of that, gear is an even more important factor in PvP. It also means that experience and your skill will also be a huge factor as well. The fact that if you have a ton of gear, a ton of experience, that's where people will eventually get to anyway, right? It won't be like, I'm just starting at a max level, I just need to, you know, I'm just trying to have fun while I'm poorly geared. It's everyone will kind of get there, so then experience and your history in Arena, your history in Battlegrounds will come into play. So this is a big deal. This is a really big deal because I've been queuing Battlegrounds on stream, and we've been going into matches where either we will decimate the other team so hard, we'll farm them at the battle, like the graveyard, we'll two-shot multiple teammates with abilities. It's like, dude, I feel this is not that fun. Listen, there's two types of people out there. There's one type of person that likes to go into Battlegrounds and stomp everybody, and everybody's that person once in a while. But then the other type of person, the other thing that people are going for is a competitive, intense, equal fight. When you stomp someone, you go into PvP, you go in there, you just kill them in 2 shots. That's not very fun. It's fun for some montages, but it's not really fun. But if you go in there and you're against equally geared, equally composed in terms of healers and DPS, and you go in equal experience, things get very exciting. Just the other day, I put a pre-made group together for my stream, twitch.tv/TiqqleThis, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we queued up. We went and we had 5 shamans. We went into Peekaboo. Peekaboo had a pre-made, I believe it was a full pre-made from his stream, and we went against each other. And he, obviously, he's way more skilled than people that I was playing with. But we got so excited because we're like, dude, this is going to be a tough match. This is going to be rough. This isn't going to be easy. We're going to have to buckle down. And so we started typing strategies. We started being like, all right, let's go. And sure, it was Pika, so like maybe you could say there's special attention given there. But we actually really tried. And that was the most fun Battleground I have played in a long time. And we didn't win, but I did. It was just a lot of fun. It was a competitive match where we were going against people that were tough. We had to focus healers. We had to pay attention. Now no one's in Discord together. It was almost like it was a pre-made 5 solo queue type setup where we weren't coordinating. We were just typing stuff and having it be like that, and that's the best way to have a Battleground. I think rated Battlegrounds in the 10-man format, that's a unique other thing. That has a different video that we should be making about that, but this is what we're talking about. When you queue up, you're not in voice, you're not worried about that. There's just base mechanics, knowledge of the game that you're applying. So I think those are the two different types of people. I think matching people up based on gear and skill is a big deal. So how do they do that? Well, you can do it two ways, I think. Number one, if you want to base it on gear, base it on their highest potential item level. That is, gear is based on highest potential item level and or progression in Mythic Pluses, progression in rating, so you know what type of content they're pushing to be able to put them with similar like experienced people against people like that. Now, I'm not saying you have to wait for 40 minutes to get onto the an equal plane. I'm just saying there needs to be some matchmaking rating for when you're queuing Battlegrounds with a pre-made or solo, where you're not just going to be just like whatever. And I don't know if that's a different bracket. It could be a separate bracket from rated Battlegrounds. It could be a separate bracket from random Battlegrounds. But I think that random Battlegrounds are going to be significantly less fun if there isn't some type of matchmaking that's underground there. Now, either Blizzard can expose it or they can hide it. But experience a kind of progression in PvE for Mythic Plus rating will indicate, and their eye level will indicate their gear level. It'll indicate the amount of damage or in healing they should be able to do. Next is skill. Skill can be rated by their experience in arena, overall experience in arena, the achievements that they have attained, as well as rated Battlegrounds. Their experience in rated Battlegrounds will definitely feed into that skill, right? So these factors, if you take those two things and you put them together, and that's at least a starting point and a way to monitor progression of people, then maybe, how do you go up or down in MMR based on that? It could just be wins or losses if you want to be simple. Or it could be based on, the DPS did this much damage, which is like a high percentile out of the group, or not a high percentile, but they were in the top 5 damage, so they get plus a little bit. And then all of a sudden, all the people that were doing top damage in Battlegrounds start to get closer to each other, and all of a sudden now you have a very high intensity, high damage BG game with the highest damages as they're rising up through the ranks. Similarly with healers. The top healers being able to bump up a little bit. They're being put up in a little bit more bracket. Now, I'm not saying to have different tiers or anything like that. I'm just saying to have some numerical system where they can rise up. 1,500, 1,600, 1,700, maybe something like that. Even if it's just an MMR or it's a totally different gauge of bronze, silver, gold, blah, blah, blah. But some way to be able to assess that and then put those pieces together to put you in a similar ranking group. The worst feeling is either getting just stomped by the other team that has 3 healers while you have 1, that while they have a very a coordinated 5-man team that is highly geared, highly skilled, and your team is composed of new level 50 characters that are just getting one shot. And then on the flip side, it's not even that much fun for them. It might be a little bit, but if you only queued Battlegrounds and you only just decimated without any challenge, that's not satisfying. Now, the whole reward system is a different discussion, but as you know, there's people that just queue up for Battlegrounds for fun. Pilaf said it in his video about just going in there and having a good time. It's one of the Thunderdomes of World of Warcraft that I personally like doing. We do it on stream all the time. We don't do it for anything other than the fight, the conflict. We have a good time. We like flexing our characters here and there, right? But the key is, without PvP tuning and without being able to switch and queue for the other faction, what we're preparing ourselves for is potentially long queue times as Horde, instant queue times on Alliance, and unbalanced BGs, and that's not necessarily going to be that much fun. It'll make for some good YouTube videos, some one-shots, but that only goes so far, and that's not going to keep everybody entertained. So I think that those are the things I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about those because I think the queuing system is a system that is kind of aging, and it's not aging well as we get to 2021 here pretty soon with other games using much more advanced matchmaking technology. I know that is a depth of game development I don't even want to get into because I don't know a lot of the nuances there. It's obviously complex to match those people up, put them in the same party, all that stuff. But that's a big deal for smoothness of at least getting into the battleground. And then once we're in there, how does Blizzard make it so that we have balance and a competitive, fun experience? Because as I've always said, I think that it's up to the designer of the game to make the experience that is had potentially be a good And they control that based on how the game's designed. So I think these are 2 suggestions I have for Blizzard if they're listening. And if you guys have any suggestions about how they should set up and balance BGs, put it down in the comments below. Put posts on the forums. I think this is a really big one because there is a huge population of players that just want to BG. They just want to come home from work, let off some steam, throw their hammers around, shoot their bows, shoot their spells, and just chill and have a good time. Getting stomped or stomping, having a quick match is not always that great. Don't get me wrong. I don't want 40-minute games every time. But that's kind of what I'll say in terms of that. So that's the matchmaking idea. That's the gear and skill. That's the matchmaking. Thank you guys so much for listening. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much to the Patreons. Thank you to the Twitch subs. I do appreciate you guys so much for supporting stream and the community. I do appreciate. We've been having a great time. Oh, and if 70% of you haven't subbed to this channel yet, I would encourage you, please sub. We're going for 50K before Shadowlands. We have a long way to go, but we can get there with you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.